The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Tuesday. It is March 10th, I believe. Yeah, there it is. March 10th, 2020. Thanks so much for joining us. You could have been anywhere in the world. I'm always grateful that you spend some time with me. Relax, everybody. You can't get the coronavirus through a podcast. I was going to edit it out, but what the hell? It's here now. All right, let's get started. Fulton County Schools, which is the county I live in Florida, in Atlanta. And before anyone tries to dox me, Fulton County is extremely big. We're talking about a few million people. But Fulton County Schools has shut down because a teacher collapsed on Friday. It was sent to the hospital, and they confirmed yesterday that it was the coronavirus. And this teacher worked at 3 different schools in our county, which means there's 3 different populations of students and other teachers who have potentially been exposed. And this is not to incite any type of panic, but it's just to say that this thing is spreading. And it's part of the spread is because of the gross incompetence of government in general, right? But the Trump administration specifically, right? And when I say government in general, I just feel like they're generally, unless you are proactive, then you're reactive. And I know that's an aphorism. I know that's pretty self-evident. But by the time you shut stuff down, that generally means that people have been exposed who otherwise would not have been exposed if you were proactive. So that's just my general critique of how the government operates in any general circumstance. But the gross incompetence of the Trump administration is going to get people killed. People who otherwise would not even had to have been exposed to this. And it's not only the gross incompetence, but it's their rejection of truth and fact. It's the rejection of common sense. And it's the hyperpartisanship. See, what's happening is the hyperpartisanship is seeping down into something that's a matter of life and death. See, with every other issue, they could have played these games. Republicans could play these games. And they tried to play, like, how dumb do you have to be to extend the ridiculousness of our hyperpartisan politics into a matter of life and death? Well, you have people like Representative Matt Gaetz of the 1st Congressional District of Florida, who last week thought it was funny, kiki, and he put on a gas mask and took it to the House floor. Or posted pictures of it. I don't know if he was on the House floor, but I for sure saw pictures of him posted pictures of him wearing a gas mask. Well, lo and behold, Matt Gaetz is now one of the 4 Republican representatives/senators who were exposed directly to the coronavirus at the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC. So 4 individuals, I believe, is Representative Gomer, Ted Cruz, Matt Gaetz, and Doug Collins of Georgia now have all self-quarantined themselves. But before they self-quarantined themselves, Matt Gaetz took a trip on none other than Air Force One with Donald Trump, who is an elder, who is an old man, who if he shook and if he came in contact with it, I mean, it was a hoax, right? Like, I don't wish anything bad on anyone, but now we're at the point of idiocracy. We're at the point of the Darwin Awards. We're now, and then to compound the injury, like the insult to injury, Matt Gaetz gets off of Air Force One with Donald Trump yesterday in Orlando, Florida. Donald Trump goes and immediately starts shaking hands with people who are on the rope line. So now, not only is it that possible that the president of the United States is spreading it himself, but it's also possible that if he wasn't infected by Matt Gaetz, because they're not taking this seriously, he could have contracted it from somebody in that crowd. This is where we are. The narration of this story, I'm sorry I'm telling it like this on Twitter. I'm talking about it like this, but because this is stranger than fiction, right? The type of virus that this is so precisely attuned to expose America. And maybe it's not just this virus. Maybe it's any pandemic, but this pandemic in particular is so precisely tuned to expose the worst parts of America and capitalism, right? Billions of dollars of wealth just wiped out yesterday. People are losing it. They're losing it because they've lost all their retirement. Some people have lost all their retirement. Others have lost a significant portion. We're not gloating over it, but it just shows the vulnerability of our economic system to the whims of investors. Like all this money, like it really is exposing how much faith we put into a system that can be eviscerated just by a group of investors changing their confidence level, changing their mind, selling. All of that wealth gone. Retirement's gone. We're getting ready to head into another recession, which is going to eviscerate that wealth even more, right? And now you have a situation where people are forced to go to work. The one thing that I heard in the press conference yesterday from Donald Trump, which was reassuring, is that they are going to do something, whatever that something is, we'll find out, for wage earners, hourly wage earners, people who feel compelled to go to work because they have to pay their bills because, they can't afford to not go to work, even if they're sick. So it's exposing it's exposing the class dynamic, because quite honestly, that virus would not have come here. It's exposing the class and the race dynamic, right? They're still blaming this. They're making this a racist thing, calling it the quote unquote Wuhan virus, right? Even though coronavirus has been around for a long time. But they're exposing their racism. Here in America, they're exposing their racism by, closing the borders of the South and not letting one in. When in reality, it's coming into America through affluent. Now, at this point, it's spreading amongst everybody. I want to make sure I make that distinction. While it had a class dynamic because it required people to fly here from exotic places. And when I say exotic, I mean basically places us poor people can't go. And now I know my Patreon is doing a little bit better, so I can't keep talking like I'm poor. I'm still just adjusting, though. I'm adjusting. I'm catching up on bills and catching up, make sure they don't repossess my car. Thank you for being a patron. But still, the fact remains, I'm poor enough to never have gone out of the country. I think I'm going to Costa Rica on a study abroad trip. That's it. So the people who have been bringing this here have been people who could afford to vacation in Italy. Cruises aren't necessarily expensive. And some, I know a lot of us we get our money together and we go on cruises, but generally it is most certainly a luxury. So it's all concentrated, all the bad air passing through, so I never really was a fan of cruises. It just felt always icky to me. Like I did one like night cruise where, we went out in the water and did a little gambling and came right back. And it was like, it's just particularly icky. But the point is that this virus is the reason I talk about this virus in context of like of a movie or a novel. It's because this virus is uncannily, it is perfectly tuned to expose all of the problems of our current political climate. While we're trying to figure out what the hell to do over here in the United States, Italy has shut down the entire country, right? The entire nation. I think 13 million people are under quarantine. That's not the entire nation, but that's still a significant percentage. But they have banned all public events, all funerals, all weddings, all those things are banned. And in order to help the people with this, they have suspended all mortgage payments, right? Yesterday in Donald Trump's press conference, the emphasis was put solely on, for the first few minutes rather, it was put solely on the private industry and what we're going to do to make sure the economy is going to be fine. Well, look, we can't really afford to worry about the economy when people are dying, right? When this is spreading, when it has right now, we have no idea what the death rate is because we can't test enough people to get the death rate. And none of this is to make anyone fearful or to incite panic of any type, but to say you better take this into your own hands. And again, when I say phrases like that, if you ever think I'm saying do something ridiculous or something extreme, I didn't. When I say take this into your own hands, you cannot wait until the government tells you to not go into public. Okay? Because by the time the American government tells you to not go into public places, crowded spaces, but by the time the American government comes around and does in the United States what they had to do in Italy, which at this rate, we're headed there. We're headed to a significant quarantine. How else are we going to get it under control? We have a whole year before we get a vaccine. So there's going to be some period of time where we are going to be quarantined as a nation, or at least a significant portion thereof. But by the time the government does it, by the time the Trump administration does it, that means it has gotten so out of control that we should have taken our own precautions in advance. So wash your hands, stay out of public places as much as you possibly can. Don't panic. If you want to keep your kids home from school, most schools at this point have exceptions where if you just get a letter or an email from your doctor, they'll recognize those as excused absences. Check with your own school district. Make sure that you're taking the precautions. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your family. And do not wait for the government to tell you, don't wait for the government to try to figure this out for you, because it's the government under the leadership of Donald Trump who has shown a significant inability to grapple with facts.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
And here we go. Very special welcome to a number of patrons that we got yesterday. Thank you so much. Jacob West, Ernie Ambrose, P. Goes, Hugh Jasso. Yes, Hugh, I understand. I get the joke. Elvando Cooper, Jared Anderson, Tom Herschel, Brian Schul, Dan, Eric Nichols, Joshua Phillips, Sibylla Waltrip, Aaron K, Sheldon Green, Tyler Hilton. Thank you all so much for becoming patrons. CC Silverwolf, Isaac Torres, Ralph Crawford, Maya Stevenson, John Cedillo, David Bautista. Sorry, I messed that up. It's an easy one. I messed it up. Welcome aboard. Alex, Aaron Andrade. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. N. O'Malley, Julie Ann Myers. I really am terrible with names, everybody, just in case you thought this was a game. Heckler DaCosta, thank you for becoming a patron. 10B2, thank you for becoming a patron. David B, David Reeder, Sophie S, Shelly Mack, Blake Newton, Shanette, Eli Van Noppen, Emily Cody, Kristen Calabrese, Saul Sanchez, Diana Purett, Kara Daly, Scott S, Coulter, David Chin, Dan Smith, Jennifer Quirk, Montana Fleming, Phantasm Ford, Justin Roos, Miria V, Diane, Regis Benin, Michael Selhorn. I am so horrible at this. Alex Lopez, Anna M, Francis Young, Menelik. Thank you for becoming a patron. Brandon, Casey Gator, Lauren Shin, Alfonso Willis, Dusty Sargent, Christina Lata, Joshua Stewart, Will Amaker, Brian Smith, Haroon, Kristen McGee, Dant, Trey Day Way. Thank you for becoming a patron. Jared Miller, Jess, Ben Winkler, John Barrows, Malcolm Alone Corley, and Aaron Lomax. Thank you all for becoming a patron. You too can join this patron family, this prestigious and prodigious patron family, by going to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you will get twice the content without any of the advertisements like the rest of you will hear now. All right, let's shift gears and go to a little bit about the politics. Now, I was going to leave the coronavirus alone, but this is a clip from yesterday at a I don't know if it was a round table. It wasn't a town hall, but it was a roundtable discussion that Bernie Sanders hosted with doctors discussing COVID-19. And the question that was posed, which infuriated one of the doctors, was how are we going to pay for the vaccine? How are we going to pay to keep people alive? This was her response. Listen.
I was growing up, we got the polio vaccine for free and nobody asked how you pay for it, because what they saw were children in iron lungs that were going to be damaged forever. How insane and cruel is it to suggest that we have to figure out how to pay for it when we can actually go to war and not ask one question, but to prevent this kind of a disease, we have to say, how can we pay for it? I'm sorry.
The cost of not paying for the vaccine is going to be orders of magnitude much more expensive.
Yeah, that's the reality. And the fact that so here's what this is what's frustrating. Can I just say what's frustrating? One, that on the same day that there's no hesitation about us bailing out Wall Street and bailing out all the people who lost billions of dollars yesterday, bailing out companies. They're talking about cutting the payroll taxes. But nobody's asking how we're going to pay for any other things. But on the same day that they're asking, or the same day that they're willing to pour out money to the private industries, they're asking how we're going to pay for the vaccine, which is being developed on the taxpayer dime. So we're already paying for the vaccine. What they're asking when they've asked this question is, how are we going to guarantee pharmaceutical companies that they are going to get their fair share of profits? That's what they're asking. Not how are we going to save lives, but how are we going to make sure that pharmaceutical companies get their profit margin? So that's why I say this virus is so uniquely tuned to make sure to expose America, to expose the worst parts of America. The ignorance of our president, the incompetence of the sheer the gross reality of our healthcare industry. It is the fact that kids can't not go to school because otherwise they won't get food. The fact that there are homeless college students that if the class is canceled and they're sent home, they don't have a home to go to. So there's just so many things, so many aspects about this virus that is exposing the frailty of our system, the incompetence of our system, the brokenness of our system, and we're just at the beginning stages of this process.
Other candidates this kind of question, veto question. Let's flash forward. Your president, Bernie Sanders, is still active in the Senate. He manages to get Medicare for All through the Senate in some compromised version, the Elizabeth Warren version or other version. Nancy Pelosi gets a version of it through the House of Representatives. It comes to your desk. Do you veto it?
I would veto anything that delays providing the security and the certainty of health care being available now. If they got that through and by some miracle, and there was an epiphany that occurred, and some miracle occurred that said, okay, it's passed, then you got to look at the cost. I want to know, how did they find the $35 trillion? What is that doing? Is it going to significantly raise taxes on the middle class, which it will? What's going to happen?
Look, I hate to be like this, but it seems to me as though Joe Biden is at his best. He shows the least level of cognitive decline when he's lying. Okay. When he's distorting the truth. It's when he's trying to be sincere that he stumbles over his words, because everything that he just said here, explaining why he would veto if we passed Medicare for all. If we passed Medicare for all, he said he would veto it for all of these reasons. And each of the reasons was disingenuous and bad faith. And I'll be honest with you, he was gaslighting us. And to be honest with you, it's when people start gaslighting you that really signifies the end of your relationship. Okay. The fact that he says that, it's going to cause people to have a lapse in coverage. No, it's not. Neither Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders nor Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All policy gives any room for any American to be uncovered. So that's a bad faith argument, but that's to be expected from Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Then he goes off and says that, it's going to raise your middle class taxes. Well, if you make $50,000 a year, according to the plan, your taxes are going to go up about $13,000 a year. Guess how much my deductible was for my coverage? $16,000. So and that's not including premiums, and that doesn't include co-pays. My premiums were like $600 a month, right? And so if you average that out, my taxes going up by $1,000 a month is far less than what it's going to cost for me to get coverage. And it's far less than it's going to cost for me to get the treatment that I'm going to need because I haven't gotten the basic coverage that I needed now. Right? See, and then he makes this argument that it's going to cost, there's so many things, and it's all just coming out of my head at one time. So that's why I stutter, because I got so many things that I want to say. But Joe Biden then went one step further. He said, well, how are we going to pay for $35 trillion over a 10-year period? Really? 35 million over a 10-year period? Let's do the math. 35 trillion over a 10-year period. If you divide that out by the 327 million Americans, you're talking about less than what? $10,000, right? About $10,000 a year per American. So the actual cost of Medicare for all is about $10,000 a year per American, which, mind you, is far less than my $16,000 deductible, plus my copays, plus my premiums. This is such a bad faith argument, and he's willing to go so far as to veto Medicare for all based on a series of bad faith arguments. That's gaslighting. And that is the most offensive thing that you could do to me, in my opinion. So I'm not going to say what everybody inevitably wants me to say. No. We're going to let it play out. Go out and vote today. Voting in some major states. Make sure that you go out there. I think what's there, about 5 states that are voting today. I know Mississippi. I know Michigan is voting. North Dakota, Missouri, Idaho, and Washington. So 6 states that are voting. Yes, I counted them just then. 6 states that are voting today. Go out and vote. I'm not going to inflame the situation anymore, because I don't have to. You can just listen to him and you hear it for yourself what they really represent. But I will say this. Irreconcilable differences have broken up quite a few relationships. And the Democratic Party needs to figure out right now if the path that they're on is the one that they're sure about, because it represents a path of irreconcilable differences. And I'll just leave it at that.
Pretty white TT, pretty white TT, pretty white TT, pretty white TT, pretty white.
I reject the idea. I really do. That's one of the things that bothers me. I hear it every day. I hear it on the media. I hear it from my opponents. Bernie is an extremist. Bernie is too radical. Okay, let's deal with it. Is raising a starvation minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, which has not been raised in 10 years, to $15 an hour, a living wage, a radical idea? No. Is making public colleges and universities tuition free so that all of our people have the opportunity to get a higher education in a competitive global economy, is that a radical idea? No. Is doing what every other major country on earth does, guaranteeing health care to all as a right. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. This is not a communist society up there in Montreal. They guarantee health care to all. They spend 50% of what we spend. Is passing a Medicare for all single-payer system a radical idea? No! And last point, Donald Trump thinks that climate change is a hoax. And that's because he doesn't understand or respect science. I believe that climate change is an existential threat to this planet. I will listen to the scientists who tell us that we have got to move aggressively to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And through a Green New Deal, by the way, we can create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. So my point is, I appreciate Allison raising the question. I just don't think any of those ideas are radical.
It's not. Those ideas are not radical at all. But we have a system that is radical. And to a radical, extremist, capitalistic system that seeks to make profit off the sick and the dying, of course, Medicare for all is going to seem radical, right? Anything that doesn't fit into their profit margin is radical. Anything that remotely hints at raising their taxes, even though it's still going to leave them filthy rich, is radical. Anything that changes their power or challenges their power structure is radical. And so we're stuck in a situation where the minority of people in this country have the most control because they have the most money. They have the majority of the money. And because the majority of the money is concentrated into the hands of a few, what we get in this country, instead of something that benefits the masses, we have something that benefits the few. And now, because the few have the ability to own their own media companies, they're now telling us that everything that is reasonable and rational across the rest of the world is radical. To compound insult to injury, you got Democrats parroting the same thing, saying the same thing. Like, how are they indistinguishable from Republicans? I want to laugh. I want to joke. Ha, 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 kiki. But I can't. I can't, because these people are gaslighting us so much. It is so infuriating that and I'm not even talking about Republicans at this point. I'm talking about Democrats. How do you expect boomers? There was some data that, it's not categorical, right? I think Bernie Sanders is getting about 11% of the boomer population, people who are 45 and older. I know those are some Generation Xers, but for the most part, those are boomers. Bernie is getting about 11% of them. So there's 11% of boomers who are cool, who are down. We rock with you, right? So forgive me when I say boomers. So Biden gets 60. No, it's not 45. It's 65 and older. Biden gets 80% of those people. Sanders gets 11%. So 11% of actual boomers, you're cool as hell to me. Okay. But for the rest of those, the 80% of boomers who are supporting Biden, I just really wonder if that's the legacy that you want to leave. Like, it's like your last hoorah. For many of you, this is your last rodeo. You won't be here in 4 years. Many of you, hell, I might not be here 4 years. So this is not an age is coming. Shit happens. I may not be here in 4 years. That's cool. But you probably, most likely, won't be here in 4 years. And you're telling me that you want your legacy, your last hoorah, your last round at the rodeo, you want to say, f those kids, f the environment, f Medicare for all, the working class, f everybody except your 401k and your ego. That's what 80% of boomers are saying right now. Okay. All right. Well, we can wait 4 more years. And even if I don't outlive you, right? Even if you come and dig up this podcast and mock me because I'm dead, the generations will live beyond you. So you'll just join me in oblivion. But I digress. The point is that if we have to outlive you in order to have progress, that is a shame on your legacy. If we have to outlive boomers in order to fix our country, shame on them. Somebody tweeted yesterday. I forgot this dude's name. He had a check mark, so maybe I guess he's important because you get a check mark, you're important, right? But this dude tweeted out that millennials were the worst and boomers were the greatest generation. And here's the thing, like, just almost by definition, we need every generation after us to be the best generation. Because I'm not particularly just looking this is the difference. People are looking to just please themselves. It's very individualistic. It is obscenely individualistic to the point where they are willing to sacrifice the future for their profit and for their portfolios. And then mock millennials, and which really millennials is a catch-all for everybody who's not a boomer, right? And then mock us because we're trying to change the world to be, 1, sustainable, but 2, so that we don't have 114,000 homeless students in New York City alone. But for them, this is their last big hoorah to stick it to the world. And what are they choosing to do? They're either choosing a candidate like Donald Trump, or they're choosing a candidate like Joe Biden, neither of whom are going to do anything on the environment, neither of whom are going to do anything for the working class, neither of whom are going to do anything for the hurting people of this country. And this is the legacy of 80% of boomers who support Joe Biden and the rest who support Donald Trump. So, hey, cool, gotcha. I may not be here in 4 years, but there's going to be a whole generation of people here in 4 years to make sure that we can fix this after you guys are out of the paint. Yep. Jennifer Epstein, a reporter, reported from an event yesterday at Joe Biden's rally fundraiser in Detroit. And this is what she reported via Twitter. She said, quote, introducing Joe Biden at tonight's fundraiser in Detroit, Senator Cory Booker, said that at a recent Congressional Black Caucus meeting, Majority Whip Jim Clyburn called Biden an honorary black man. Jim Clyburn, who I had a chance to meet 2 weeks ago, who gave Joe Biden the boost that he needed to win South Carolina and subsequently to win Super Tuesday. I mean, he didn't win Super Tuesday, but he won the narrative of Super Tuesday. Jim Clyburn, part of the Congressional Black Caucus, obviously. Jim Clyburn, one of the most distinguished black leaders in the black communities of black, said Joe Biden, the mentee of a segregationist, Joe Biden, the architect and the spirit behind the 94 crime bill and mass incarceration, Joe Biden, who was behind the 84 crack mandatory minimum sentences that send a whole generation of black men to jail for mandatory sentences. Joe Biden is an honorary black man. Listen, man, I'm so tired of black folks. Listen, ain't nobody else. We have a moratorium on inviting non-black people to the cookout. Nobody else. This shit is just going too far. It's going entirely too far. We're giving everybody. I mean, what's next? We're going to give Donald Trump a pass to the cookout, right? Who's next? Who we got next? Strom Thurmond? Well, we're going to posthumously give him an invitation to the cookout now. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. And really it is indicative of the decline of the black misleadership class. Man, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I'm not going to say, listen, my analyses in general have been spot on over the last couple of years. That's why you're here. That's why I do what I do. But man, I've been wrong, man. I have really been wrong. Glenn Ford of the Black Agenda Report, who always calls these group of people the black misleadership class. I used to hate hearing him say that. It was like it was the point of my life when I rejected information that I did not want to hear. That's where I was. And it was the gaslighting of the Democratic Party that shook me out of my stupor. And now I have to reflect back and say, wow, well, holy damn. Glenn Ford, who got on my nerves every time he would say the black misleadership class. And I'm like, man, come on, man, bro. We're just trying to survive. We're scratching and surviving. Good times, bro. Hanging in a job in good times. Come on, man. We're just trying to figure our way out through this thing. We don't have it all right. Not all of our black leaders are right. Some of them get it wrong, but come on, man. We're just trying to piece it together. Chill out, Glenn. Nah, man. Glenn Ford was right. This is the black misleadership class. Side note, white folks, y'all know I love you. Stay out of this conversation, though. Stay out of this conversation. And I appreciate you respecting boundaries, right? I have only one podcast. I don't have a black podcast. I have a podcast where a black man speaks to everybody, and occasionally I got to give you inside information. So when I'm giving you inside information, just nod your head. Just nod your head. All right, everybody in the audience, just nod your head. Yeah. But really, like, it's time. We have to have just like we have to get rid of a certain type of Democrat, whether they be white or whatever color, the representation of the black community has got to change, because we have a representation that is not representative of the black community. Last week I did an episode on the diversity of the working class, right? You have the same percentage of African Americans in the working class that you have in the United States. I mean, and that's category by category. The working class is the most diverse, most representative body subset in this country. And that's just the working class. We're not even talking about black folks who are living paycheck to paycheck, right? The problem is that black folks have been inspired to live off of aspirations. Now, I know these group of people, I'm not really a fan of them. But one of the persons I heard best dissect this was Antonio Moore, who's now a part of the ADOS movement. Not necessarily a fan of Antonio or Yvette Carnell, but one thing Antonio said that is very true. It is aspirational wealth that is keeping a lot of black folks looking like, protecting people who look more like Bill Cosby than everybody hates Chris. right? We elevate people who look more like, I love the show Blackish. Your boy from Blackish and his family, black folks ain't got that kind of money. A handful do, but the majority of us do not. And so when we have our leaders and our representatives who are more determined to protect the status quo, they're more determined to protect this economic system and this political system that is hurting the majority of African Americans, that means it's time for a new type of leader. And so like Glenn Ford said, this is the Black Miss Leadership class. Listen, this has been a very sobering primary season. This has been like a mea culpa for me.
Mea culpa.
Yes, I just checked the pronunciation of that, and no, I'm not editing it out. I will not allow myself to take myself seriously, but we seriously need new leadership in the Black community. Cult of personality is a horrible thing. And for anyone who says, oh, Bernie has a cult of personality, no, Bernie is just the leader of a movement of people who would shred him to pieces if he ever turned coat on what we're fighting for. Right? Case in point, in 2015, we all were pushing for Elizabeth Warren, run. It wasn't until she decided not to run that we were like, okay, we need a new leader for this movement. And we found Bernie Sanders, or Bernie Sanders found us. I don't know. Maybe it happened at the same time. But if Bernie Sanders ever wavered from what we're fighting for, then we would no longer support Bernie Sanders. Guarantee you. There's not a single person. I think you might have 1% of Bernie Sanders supporters who would still support him if he turned away from, let's say, Medicare for all. But what I'm seeing more, this white liberal woman obsession with Hillary Clinton is starting to trickle down into this into a cult of personality around Elizabeth Warren, to be quite frank with you, but particularly the one that's surrounding Hillary Clinton, and like the kind of servile positioning, like this kind of prostrating yourself before Queen Hillary. Then it's trickling down into the Warren supporters, especially in this period after she's lost or she's conceded the primaries, right? And the narrative that I'm seeing being transferred from Hillary Clinton to Elizabeth Warren is like, it's one of sycophantic worship of an individual versus the policies that individual was fighting for. So when I said in the episode yesterday, in the Patrons Only episode, that no, I don't believe Elizabeth Warren owes me a damn thing, but she certainly owes you as a supporter something. Don't you have any dignity about you? Like, you poured in your money, you poured in your time, you made phone calls, you text, you canvassed, you purchased t-shirts, you went to rallies, you called friends, you worked to make sure endorsements were I mean, you gave it your all. And tell me, did you give it your all for her or for progressive policies? Because if you gave it your all for her, that means that you're caught in a similar cult of personality as the Hillary stans who are still saying, yes, Queen Hillary. You're getting caught up in that same fashion. And that bothers me. And that bothers me. Like, this is not categorical, because here's what I've also seen, right? And it's been quite spectacular. I've seen people who supported Elizabeth Warren who have 100% picked up the same energy. They are out here canvassing. They're making phone calls. They're changing the minds of voters. I see you, Tracy, over at CPD. I mean, I see there are people who are like the policy and the progress is the point. And the people who are stuck here at this place where now everything is about the grievance of a uber successful multi-millionaire woman who could write her check for the rest of her life. Elizabeth Warren is going to be as good as Hillary Clinton is. They're not going to have a single problem for the rest of their lives, but there are millions of people who need progressive policies, and we have a significant portion, I don't know what percentage, but we have a portion of this base who are like making this all about the plight of white liberal women. And I'm sorry, but we've got a fight to continue. We got stuff we're fighting for. People's lives are depending on us. And so I'm just blown away. Like, why did you support? Why did you see? I don't have to ask this question of Hillary Clinton supporters, because Hillary Clinton supporters are probably overwhelmingly with Joe Biden. So I can't ask them if they were doing this for progressive policy, because they never were, right? Whatever their motivation was, whether it was just to have a woman as president, I'm looking forward to the day that we can have a woman as president. It should have been 2016. Hell, it should have been a long time ago. Shirley Chisholm, right? Let's not act like this is the first woman to run for president. We should have had a woman president by now, without question. But we didn't make it this go around. And it's whatever you want to blame it on. I could just tell you, if you blame it on sexism of the bros, then really, the math doesn't add up, because all of us bros were waiting there we were begging Elizabeth Warren in 2015, pleading with her to become the nominee, to run, so that we can support her. But there's this narrative that is, I don't know. I don't know. It's a grievance narrative, particularly around white liberal women, that really is devolving into a cult of personality that is inheriting some of the same traits that you see around the cult of personality around Hillary Clinton, that makes it more about that individual's career, that individual's personal grievances, that individual's personal plight, instead of the people for whom we were ostensibly fighting for in the first place. That's all I'm saying. Like, should Elizabeth Warren be given time? I mean, I don't know. Whatever you think, that's your prerogative. But to be quite honest with you, she does owe somebody something, and she owes you, her supporters, something, because you donated the money, you donated the time, and you went and knocked on doors, you canvassed, you wore t-shirts, you went to rallies, you did all that. And the only question is, why? Did you do it to support her, or for the policies? Because I could tell you, I'm not going to spend probably not a single day grieving Bernie Sanders' career if he doesn't get the nomination. Some of my supporters will. I can't speak for them. I won't, because it's going to have. We got to go to the next move. We got to go to the next person. We have to find the right representative. Go out there and vote today. So make sure that doesn't happen. But if that comes to I'm not going to spend the next 4 years like Hillary stands, grieving and doing documentaries and reliving the moment. Oh, slave queen. Oh, King Bernie Sanders did not get what he deserved. He worked all his life and didn't get. Man, Bernie Sanders is going to be fine. Hillary Clinton's going to be fine. Elizabeth Warren is going to be fine. How are the people going to be? Those people that you were fighting for, how are they going to hold up? How are those people who need Medicare for all, how are they going to hold up? How are those people who need their college debt canceled, how are they going to hold up? How are those people who can't find housing, how are they going to hold up? We spend so much time around the personality of please, progressive bros and brus, like, don't come to me grieving Bernie Sanders if he doesn't make it this time. Like, we want to do everything we possibly can, but what we have to do is pick ourselves right back up and remember why we are fighting. We're not fighting for Bernie Sanders. We're fighting for the people that he represents. And so if he's no longer representing the people, then we fight for the people until there's another representative. Does that make sense? So no, Elizabeth Warren doesn't owe me a damn thing. I think she owes you, her supporters, everything. And at a minimum, you owe it to yourself not to lay yourself prostrate before the throne of white liberal women grievance. Elizabeth Warren's about to make so much money. She's going to take a month. She's going to take she might take a whole year vacation while the rest of us are struggling. And she needs that vacation. Go take it. I'm not knocking her. What I'm telling you is that we have to move on. When our heroes don't cut it, we move on, because there's still a fight to be fought. So much more coming up in the Patrons episode. I don't know if I lost supporters or patrons because of that, because I honestly have been doing my best to be as patient and considerate to the listeners of my show who support Elizabeth Warren. But it's just too much grievance going on, and that that really does not, we should grieve for the people who are in a position to not get any progressive policy. We should grieve for the people who are not going to get Medicare for all, like me. You know, I'm about to take my little Patron money and go pay $700 a month for healthcare, you know. So thank you all for being a patron, because at least now I can go pay that $700 for healthcare and the $16,000 for a deductible. Yeah. And then I'm lucky. I'm lucky because I guess we can do it. I didn't go and talk to my wife. We'll figure it out. But so many people are not lucky. And I think if we have been fighting for them all this time, then you would do like I've seen quite a few Warren supporters do. They have picked up the fight and they've gone straight into the next gear of fighting on behalf of the people. Not the personality, but the people. Patrons, stay tuned. 15 seconds, we're going to kick it off with the Patrons episode. Everyone else, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.